Rothschilds, one of the richest families of the world, one of the biggest dynasties of the world. Why are they connected to royal families? Why do they own so many things? Why is there an island in Antarctica named the Rothschild Island? Why does the Rothschild dynasty have so much power in the world today? What is most commonly known about them? That the Rothschilds are a European banking dynasty with the origins that date back to the 15th century. And the family name comes from the red shield, which translates to Zum Roten Schild. Mayor Amschel Rothschild, the founder, established his banking dynasty in the late 18th century. And the most common story is that he started out as an antique coin collector. While he was collecting ancient coins, he was also collecting ancient artifacts. In fact, the Rothschilds are known to have the vastest and most intricate antique and artifact collection of all of Europe. It is thanks to them that we have discovered the Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets that speak of the ancient gods and the true origin of our planet. Before, the Rothschilds' coat of arms was the fist holding the 5 arrows, each arrow representing one of the Amschel's sons, the 5 sons. And this emblem was to show their unity in power and strength. But long before this, who were they? So if we go back in their heritage, into their genealogy, we'll find that the Jewish bankers go all the way back to Mesopotamia, all the way back to ancient Egypt and the Second Pyramid War. The year 363, His Majesty Ra, the Holy One, the Falcon of the Horizon, the immortal who forever lives. He was in the land of Ken. He was accompanied by his warriors and his lines of high priests. For there were enemies conspiring against their lord. They conspired against their lordship and wanted to keep the shiny holy crown for themselves. It all took place in the ancient Egyptian city of Edfu. In this tale, we believe that this is where the origin story of the Rothschild begins. Ra's warriors were originally from the city of Samash, and they were also known as the BITCHUTE, which, if we go research in history, basically Freemasons. They are the people, the warriors that helped the god Ra escape from the Second Pyramid War. Another name for Ra is Marduk. Marduk was the son of Enki, one of the 2 Anunnaki princes here on Earth to rule. And for this story, we need to go back to ancient Mesopotamia, Sumer, Ur. This is the dynasty of the Anunnaki. Now, usually when we see people that are descendants of the Anunnaki gods, they usually fall into the royal families. This is how kingship was established. But the Rothschilds are not royal. So how did they become barons? Why did the English royal family, the Austrian royal family, and the French royal family decide to elevate these Jewish bankers to the title of baronet, baron, and baroness? What was the deal? Why? Amschel Rothschild, while he was trying to collect these antique coins, falls upon these artifacts describing what could possibly be his heritage. Not only his heritage, but a divine right, a claim. So these Freemasons were called the BITCHUTE, and these people were the ones that helped Amun-Ra escape. Ra's aunt was one of the ones that went there during the Pyramid Wars to bring peace. And it was with the help of the BITCHUTE people, Ra's warriors, that they helped him escape. After Marduk, Ra was taken away, he left his rule to this people. These people then became the high priesthood line of Ra. In fact, in ancient Egypt, after the gods and after the kings, who were the most important people? The high priests. So Ra left his kingdom to his Kham, the Ra Kham, the shield of Ra, the warriors. So Kham translate into shield, Ra calm, raw shield. In time, it became Rothschild. You see where we're going? And this decree for them to rule came down tens of thousands of years ago. Who's the richest family on the planet with a combined income of $700 trillion? The Rothschilds. Before he left, he decreed that his kingdom would go to the raw calm. And calm, K-A-M, now translates into shield. So now we have the raw shield. So raw shield, a red shield, Rothschild, the Rothschilds, the children of Ra.
So if I give you a glass of water and then I piss in it and then I add sugar, it doesn't remove the piss. These are both independent things. This is what tends to happen. This is what we don't understand about trauma. Removing the piss requires removing the piss. No amount of sugar will take it out of the drink. Okay? So this is mistake number one. No amount of building something good will remove something bad. Okay? So healing, and it's also like, if I break a leg, no amount of bench press will heal my leg. Like, I can build as much as I want to. I can fix my hair. I can brush my teeth, but the leg is broken. The leg is broken. Same is true of the mind. Okay? Second thing is what happens is we have, like, our consciousness is divided. Now we're going to get kind of technical and off the rails. So we have all of these, like, dormant pieces of our consciousness that activate in certain situations. One of the biggest mistakes we make about healing is we look at what is active in our mind 90% of the time, and we assume that the injury is no longer there. That's not the case. Does that make sense?
100%.
Right? So the injury just goes dormant. Then there are certain things that happen that can trigger that injury. That's what we call triggers, right? So if I'm traumatized, if we look at like PTSD and I've been traumatized by, a bomb going off, literally my brain has certain circuits that scans my perceptual environment and decides what to activate. So there are ways stillness makes you feel small, and fuck you if you're ever going to be small again. Never again, never again, never again. I would bet money that if you sit by yourself and you're not occupied, right? That's why you have to watch crime shows, because if you don't watch crime shows, you're going to be still. And if you're still, that's unacceptable. Okay? So dormant things have to be healed where they belong. And this is where we can look at the science of healing trauma. So here are the steps. First thing is safety, so that we can get neuroplasticity. Second thing is emotional awareness and emotional regulation. And this allows us for number 3, which is really important, which is identity. So if we look at our human sense of identity, how do you develop an identity? So identity requires a timeline.
Okay.
Now, the interesting thing is if we look at the formative moments of your life, they all have emotion. So this is what's really important. If you have an identity that is bad in any way, you can never change that identity without emotions. So who we are is a narrative of our most emotional experiences. There are all these moments, these powerful emotional moments. So if your emotions are dulled by drugs, by technology, by pornography, by watching serial killer shows, you will never change who you are. It is impossible. The neuroscience of your identity and development requires emotional experience. Okay? So with trauma, that's the next thing that happens. Once we have access to emotions, then we can become someone else. Now, the problem with trauma is that before we become someone else, the beliefs we have about ourselves become our destiny. And that's not like some, spiritual, get connected with you. This is like fucking science, right? If you believe you are a loser, the empathic circuits of other people's brains will detect that in you, and they will treat you like a loser. You carry who you are with you. That's why you get into failed relationship number 1, failed relationship number 2, failed relationship number 3, until you changed. And when you change, your sense of identity changes, then your future will change. The last thing to do is, on a more microscopic level, look at these responses within yourself. So you asked me at the very beginning of the podcast, and now we're coming full circle. How do you start understanding yourself? So you look at the drives within yourself, right? How do you start? So what I would say is sit for 5 minutes, 15 minutes. Sometimes we'll tell people to stare at a wall for an hour. And just look at what on earth goes on inside you. You will discover that it is a zoo of thoughts, feelings, emotions, drives, panics, worries, distractions. Your internal environment is such a mess. So what we need to do is just kind of calm that stuff down by like just letting it kind of run out of steam. So this is a principle of the mind that if we feed our mind, it'll continue to grow. But like what we need to do is just let it run out of steam. So just sit and do nothing for a while. People don't realize the part of our brain that exerts willpower has something to do with this part of our brain called the anterior cingulate cortex. The anterior cingulate cortex is a piece of where willpower comes from, but it is also the part of our brain that monitors conflict. So willpower and monitoring a conflict are actually technically the same thing. The same part of the brain activates. And if you pay attention to your own internal experience, what you'll realize is anytime you're using willpower, there's an internal struggle that you are paying attention to. It's like, I don't want to order chicken. I want to order fried chicken. So there's a monitoring of the conflict that goes on. That's anytime you're exerting willpower, there's this thing this way and this thing this way, but you are aware of it. You can't exert willpower if you're behaving automatically, right? That's why it's so easy to get lost in doom scrolling, because you're not even aware of what you're doing before, and then 4 hours have gone by and you're like, what happened? You're not aware. So this is the crazy thing from a neuroscientific perspective, and this is what the yogis will teach as well. Awareness is willpower. Tons of addicts, they come up for air, and maybe you've done this, and maybe people at home have done this. You go on this binge and then you come up for air and you're like, what have I been doing for a couple of days? What I've been doing for a couple of hours? Then you gain that awareness again. So the more that you are aware in the present moment, the more your problems will literally melt away. It's like crazy. I don't quite know how it works, but this is what yoga teaches you, that as you are aware, as you are aware, as you are aware, you stop rejecting things, you start accepting things, you focus on the present. All the stuff that everyone talks about is actually rooted in awareness. And we live in a society where if I say you don't need habits, you don't need willpower, you don't need discipline, all you need is awareness, people will reject me. That doesn't mean it isn't true. And the more that you explore awareness, the more you will realize, like I used to think it was like 50-50. I'm now at like 90% of the problem is awareness. I know it's weird. But.
No, but does that, because we tend to look for solutions that involve action. Mm-hmm. Like, buy that thing, make that list, go to that meeting, watch that thing. It's all about action, action, action as a solution to our problems. So I was expecting you to tell me that the solution to everything we've discussed here is like this 7-step process of like, write this thing down, say this thing, and
Okay, so let's understand this, okay? You don't need to focus on the action. It's the internal thing that drives you like a fucking slave that is responsible for your success. If someone else wants a fraction of what you have, 10% of what you have, they don't need to duplicate your actions. They need to duplicate what's going on the inside. This is exactly my point.
They need your toxic fuel.
Yeah. Toxic fuel is on the path to happiness, right?
Yeah.
So the stages of unhappiness to happiness. There's unhappy in all situations, unhappy in some situations, happy in some situations, happy in most situations, and then moksha, enlightenment, mukti is happiness in all situations. Happiness that is completely independent of your circumstances. That's the stage that you're at. Because we can make you unhappy very, very easily.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense. This is what happens is we start to craft a life that makes us happy. That's the first step. Totally good. But then what happens is that we are still dependent on the external life for our happiness. And that will never work 100%. So if I give you a glass of water and then I piss in it, and then
the Andromedans are approximately 45. Small machines have been discovered that were built so long ago that no one really knows for sure who built them. They cannot be replicated, and no one knows exactly how they were built. Now, I'll give you an example of the Andromedans. The Andromedans are approximately 43 to 4,500 years more advanced than we are technologically. Now that's in our years, all right? Now in our years here, I need more leash. Okay, a year for us equals 365 days. Okay, this is one rotation around our sun. The Andromedans count years in a completely different way. In fact, almost all the extraterrestrials do. And their concept of age, of counting, especially in this way, what they consider a year is when every cell in their body has been fully replicated. Now, if we did that, 1 year would be equal to 7 years in our body. Okay, so it takes approximately 34 years for their bodies in our time to replicate every cell in their body in our time. Okay? So it's hard to give you exact dates of when they say something happened to put it into our timeline, okay, of years. Okay? Because in reality, if I say it was 4,000 years ago, then it's a lot longer than that. Okay? But they've had a very hard time explaining to me exactly in our Earth time because they don't deal with the concept of time. You know? They just don't. All right? So, but I'm giving you these numbers in Earth years just to give you an idea of how vast our history is. Okay? Now, amazingly, these machines still work. The machines do not have a name in the English language. Okay? They don't even have a symbol that we could comprehend. So, it's been explained to me that it is considered an antimatter machine. Okay? It creates matter. It creates molecules, which then create atoms, which then creates physicality. And these are actual machines. They're like computers, where you can program it for what you want, and this machine will literally bring it forth and manifest it. And there it is, physically there. Okay? Now, if each one of us had one of these machines, it would be like winning the lottery every day. You know? Mike likes to do VWs. He could make himself a new VW as soon as the new models came out. As soon as he knew what he wanted. Okay? I could create a babysitter. You know? So that my wife and I could go out. Okay? And that's what now, apparently there are 7 of these actually working, and 7 different races have one of these machines. Now, these are archaeological finds, discoveries, these atom-making machines, for lack of a better word.
Is that on this Earth?
I'm sorry?
Is that on this Earth?
There is one on the planet. There is one here. Yes, there is. What?
Is that the one on Jerusalem?
No comment. No comment.
Do you know where they were found?
Nobody knows. Absolutely nobody knows. It turns out that, well, let me just finish reading here, okay? And because all this will come out. They also discovered advanced building complexes, very large machinery, and complete terraforming ecosystems. Earth-like organic life is much less common than hydrogen gas ecosystems in our galaxy because we are limited. Oxygen O2 ecosystems are limited to the geological presence of water. Okay, for O2 life forms, which is what everything is on this planet, there has to be water. So, the most precious thing that we have is our ecosystem, our biosphere. The second most important precious thing we have is, of course, the water. And when we get to Nibiru, I'm just going to throw this out there, the entire planet used to be fresh water. Okay? Our entire planet used to be fresh water. The oceans were salinated. Okay? And it was the Nibiru from the star system of Butez that did that, because they wanted to control the water. Okay?
They salted the sea.
They salted the sea. That's right. So now all you have is, at the time when they did this, there was only 4 small machines.